All right, we're gonna get started. Thanks everybody for joining the COPRI Coastal Engineering Sciences Committee Technical Lunch and Learn. This is the fourth in a series of technical webinars organized by our committee, and we plan to host a technical webinar every few months on varying topics that relate to people with an interest in the coast, whether they be engineers, scientists, planners, officials, or just residents. Some of you are likely familiar with COPRI and some of you may not be. COPRI is the Coasts, Oceans, Ports, and Rivers Institute of the American Society of Civil Engineers, or ASCE. And within COPRI, there are many ways for interested practitioners to get involved through local chapters, technical committees, or student chapters. The Coastal Engineering Sciences Committee is one of several technical committees within COPRI. And one of our core initiatives is outreach. So we developed this technical lunch and learn series to provide a way for coastal community to engage with each other and learn about recent large and impactful projects and research. We open this up on a national platform and hope it fosters discussion as well as idea sharing during these days when in-person conferences and workshops are still quite limited. So while we call this a lunch and learn, we realize that there are attendees from all over. So this could be a breakfast and learn in some, or it could be later in the afternoon for others. But no matter what time it is, we're glad you're here. And we'll move on to today's presentation. So I would like to introduce Dr. Amanda Tritinger. Dr. Tritinger is a research hydraulic engineer who has expertise in coastal engineering with a focus in numerical modeling and engineering with nature. Recently, she has worked with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Engineering Research and Development Center's Coastal and Hydraulic Laboratory, or CHL. Her research goal is to help create a more resilient future for America's coastal communities. And a little bit more about Dr. Tritinger. She received her Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Engineering at the University of Central Florida, her Master of Science degree in Civil Engineering from the University of North Florida, and her Doctor of Philosophy degree in Coastal and Oceanographic Engineering from the University of Florida. Since March of 2021, she has been the Assistant Program Manager for the Engineering with Nature program. And today she's going to be speaking about the Engineering with Nature program. We plan for Dr. Tritinger to speak for about 30 minutes with plenty of time for questions and discussion following the presentation. Please type in any questions you have during the presentation or after the presentation using the chat, or after the presentation, you can use the raise hand function and we'll unmute you and you can ask your question directly. So with that, take it away, Amanda.
All right, thanks, Chris. Hopefully you can hear me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here at COPRI's Lunch and Learn. I love lunch, I love learning, and I've always loved COPRI. I was a part of COPRI throughout all of my graduate studies, and it's a wonderful program. So just thank you for doing this series, and thanks for involving me. So before we get going, I forgot I sent Chris all of that information on my background, but I have a small slide on who I am, just so everyone can kind of get to know who's speaking today, what my background is. Hopefully I can get build some buy-in from all of the Florida attendees out there. But like Chris said, my background is in environmental engineering, civil engineering, and coastal and oceanographic engineering. So it's kind of the perfect trifecta to find myself just kind of falling in love with the Engineering with Nature program at Urtic, the Engineering Research and Development Center. Before I talk about what the Engineering with Nature program does and what my role is within it, I wanted to point out my colleagues here in the bottom right corner, Dr. Todd Bridges, who is the EWN National Lead, Dr. Jeff King, who is the Program Manager for the EWN Initiative, and Courtney Chambers, our amazing communications lead, who helps us deliver that tech transfer to expand the EWN practice throughout the nation and globally. So what is the Engineering with Nature program, or EWN? EWN is the intentional alignment of environmental processes with engineering practices. So we want to collaborate relentlessly with different agencies, different universities, different science organizations. And then also we need to collaborate with Mother Nature and make sure we're using her tool set to better engineer this country. So the key elements that are going into the EWN initiative are science and engineering that produces operational efficiencies. We're making sure that we maximize the natural processes to get multiple benefits from each of our USACE projects. We want to broaden and extend benefits provided by those projects. And along the way, we just need to make sure that all of our work is scientifically sound, holistic projects that are collaborative processes that organize and focus interests with the stakeholders and our partners and the people that are living with these projects nearby. So how do we achieve these goals? We have this innovative practice that has these 5 points here, where we aim to achieve these objectives through policy development, through engagement, partnering and teaming, through research, huge R&D lift, that's the EWN program at Urtic, and then on the ground projects and demonstrations. So as we develop this R&D at the Engineering Research and Development Center, we are testing through prototypes on the ground. So we can point to case studies and kind of have the background to take on some of the risk of flying our R&D around the nation. And then we're making sure along the way we have strategic communications. We don't want to hold tight to the knowledge we found. We want to fill those knowledge gaps and identify future knowledge gaps, and then every step of the way share lessons learned, whether they be positive or negative, so that everybody can move this practice forward. In the next few minutes, I'm going to try to relate a bunch of our initiatives to each one of these examples. So take a second to memorize these 5 points, because I'm going to just really try to hone in on each one of these strategic practices. The first being our engagement, partnering, and teamwork. So to achieve this, we've developed USACE proving grounds throughout the nation. We have 5 districts that are involved as a USACE proving ground and 1 division. And for those of you that haven't, taken it to heart what the engineering, the USACE engineer enterprise infrastructure looks like, I have this map here to point out what a division or a district even is. So districts cover set regions of the country. We have, for example, the Galveston district covers this little area of the Gulf of Mexico, and then a division will cover multiple districts. So districts report to divisions, and then divisions report to this yellow star here, which is headquarters. So we've been building these proving grounds throughout the nation to have not only this engagement and this partnering, but we want to make sure that this R&D gets applied. So this is on the ground, operational and strategic research at work. And these are the 6 districts that we've been working with, and we just recently have included the South Pacific Division. We had a whole big week-long workshop over there where we're going to make sure that we're not missing out on including the West Coast. So another example of what this proving ground looks like is the Mobile District. And up here I have the Mississippi Coastal Improvements Program that's been developing NNBF along the Gulf of Mexico for a few years now. There's many different projects we can point to as case studies of successful NNBF natural nature-based feature implementation. An example on the bottom right is Deer Island Restoration Project, where the Mobile District has been funding this restoration project, and we have been working with them to implement EWN research. So for example, we have a modeling tool that has come to completion at Urtic. This tool now incorporates vegetation flow and how it affects morphologic change in the dunes. We're going to talk to Mobile District and include a prototype testing in Deer Island to be able to say, this tool works and this is what it looks like to include it in your project. So that's what the proving ground sort of looks like. it's a strategic research demonstration where we can say, hey, what opportunities do you have at your district going on, and how can we help you, and then get that tech transfer out there, share our research tools and what we've been working on at Urtic. We also have developed 4 positions at the districts that we are calling EWN practice leads. We have 2 coastal practice leads and 2 fluvial or riverine EWN practice leads. And these engineers and ecologists, they are our POCs, our points of contact at the district, where if Buffalo District is having trouble implementing a beneficial use plan, they talk to Elizabeth Godsey at the Mobile District, who has successfully done a similar BU project, or Elizabeth Godsey will point her to another district that has successfully completed that work. So these practitioners, these practice leads are building a group of EWN researchers who are sharing their experiences, their successes, their failures with working with natural nature-based features throughout the districts. And they've actually just implemented a cadre where it's just a network of engineers that are coming together and asking really high-level questions. How do you quantify co-benefits? How did you put this 3x3 together? It's a great group. There's no wrong answers. There's no wrong questions. And these practice leads are really going to, again, just expand the EWN initiative. So I want to talk about, again, the power of partnerships. So Swan Island is a great example of this. We have been working with the Baltimore District on the restoration of Swan Island. Baltimore District had this opportunity. Again, they're one of our proving grounds, where there's a navigation channel that was located in the Chesapeake Bay around the Tangier Sound, and within this grouping of islands, it's called Smith Island. And they were dredging this navigation channel anyway, and the Baltimore District said, hey, we have an opportunity to strategically place this dredged material instead of just dumping it at their usual drop-off location. And we worked with them to identify how they could place the material and restore this Swan Island that is an island that provides a lot of recreational benefit. We did some modeling to show that the island would also provide risk reduction benefit to the surrounding town, and again, like the full Smith Island group of islands in the Chesapeake Bay. So we did a lot of work with them to figure out how to drop the 65,000 cubic yards of dredged material they had, and we also talked about what their vegetation should look like. So we helped them figure out where they wanted to put 160,000 vegetation plugs. This is low and high salt marsh, and it's been a highly collaborative effort, highly visual. We've been working with University of Maryland, University of Georgia, Fish and Wildlife, NOAA, EA, Maryland Department of Marine Resources. Everyone's been involved in this. It's been really great. While, for example, Urtic went out there and put the monitoring stations up there to monitor things like water level, dissolved oxygen, suspended sediment, the whole gambit. We then worked with Fish and Wildlife and NOAA to figure out a plan to monitor the vegetation more consistently, collect that data more often, and we kind of traded responsibilities with this whole group for the past 3 years. And it's been a very, very highly visible project where we're able to develop not only a monitor and adaptive management plan for the island, but we've also been able to document what it even looks like to develop such a product. And I'm going to drop some links in the chat at the end of this talk, but one of the links I'm going to drop is a storyboard for this project. It's a great example of how to partner with the agencies that can just own their expertise and get the job done in a really, really innovative way. So strategic communications, and again, partnership goes into this network for engineering with nature. The NOON, as we call it, is a large-scale network that involves multiple agencies, multiple universities, and the goal of this network is to come together and talk about what those knowledge gaps are, what's needed to advance the engineering with nature practice, and what research needs to happen and what teams need to be on those research activities to complete and fill those knowledge gaps. So this is a really great group of researchers, and it's constantly increasing. We freely communicate our research projects within the NUN, but then also what we're doing at each university and each agency. And we've just recently onboarded 3 more universities, which is really exciting. So again, just that strategic communication is really important. Everybody needs to be learning from everybody else's experiences, and we'll see a brighter tomorrow. So I want to talk about policy development really briefly. This slide shows a beneficial use workshop that USACE led back in July of 2021. We had folks from headquarters, Urtic researchers, and the people at the districts who are leading the beneficial use initiative. And we had all of these people online for 3 days. We talked about what our current status was in BU and what our research needs to look like, what our application needs to look like to get us to 70% beneficial use by the year 2030. That's a really aggressive goal, but because of this workshop and because of the activities that have fallen out of this workshop, we believe that we can meet this and we can achieve this goal. So this is a really cool workshop where we had headquarters on the phone. We were involved in what the practitioners want to see from policy. We talked about what works with current policy, what doesn't work, how to work with policy. We told success stories, we told failure stories, and we were just really open with what Urtic and what USACE needs to be doing to achieve this really, really aggressive but future-looking BU goal by 2030. So a lot of things like this happen policy side. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm about to go into my favorite part of the program, and that is our research and development projects. So this is where my job really comes into focus. I monitor about 25 projects currently at Urtic. We're about to expand to 10 to 20 here in the next year. And these R&D projects would try to cover multiple regions. We would try to cover many different technical arenas. They include remote sensing for EWN application. We've developed engineering guidance for natural nature-based features, international guidelines. I'll talk a little bit about those at the end. We've also, in bold, I have on number 1, put out 2 EWN Atlas volumes. So these booklets are really great. They're a great communication tool where they show the different types of EWN projects that have happened already and what the success stories are of them and the implementation process, what that looks like. And it's a really great coffee table book. It's a really good communications tool. So we're going to keep putting those out. But they don't just include USACE projects. About half of the projects within the EWN Atlases are USACE, but they're international projects. It's just a great communication tool if you're talking to a stakeholder or somebody that they're not sure exactly what they want. It's a great book to point to and say that we could do something like this. So we also have the EWN System Modeling Toolkit, which I'm going to talk about in 2 slides. That's my research. We have a group working on sustainable dredge sediment practices. We have riverine reservoir research. We have research on wildfire recovery and what that looks like for water runoff and what we can do to achieve multiple benefits and develop in the design of our stream banks to make sure that we are considering what happens after a wildfire when we're designing what our stream flow looks like. And then a lot of EWN through landscape architecture and more. So if you want to know more, again, I'm going to drop a link in the chat to find out how you can learn more about each of our research projects. I'm going to just talk about a few of them here. In the bottom right, we have one of our wave flumes that's located at Urtic at the Coastal Hydraulics Lab in Vicksburg, Mississippi. This flume is designed to recreate the mangrove system through these PVC. So our researchers spent a lot of time developing these prototypes to mimic the mangrove system. And I just love these two photos right here because I don't need quantitative proof. They achieved it. So a number of field investigations have been documented on wave and surge attenuation by coastal mangroves and ecosystems. However, a lot of those studies usually focus in low energy environments, or they rely on post hoc observation studies following storms. So this, enter the wave attenuation in coastal mangroves during extreme water levels at near prototype scale project. Our researchers implemented very strategic prototypes that are on a scale of 1 to 6, and these laboratory studies they focus on the performance and feasibility evaluation of incorporating these mangroves into existing USACE projects. So these studies are looking at answering the question of how big and where do you place mangroves? What's the spacing? What is the benefit? What is your risk reduction benefit to incorporating these features into your designs? So that's a pretty cool ongoing study. I'll drop a link to that research in the chat. Next, I have the Engineering with Nature Toolkit for Urtic's coastal storm modeling system. So this toolkit is developed to aid numerical models in the incorporation of the state-of-the-art NNBF research we're doing, and incorporating that state-of-the-art research into a numerical modeling background. So this toolkit will allow the user to rapidly represent EWN features in your augmented numerical modeling framework. The user will have some kind of geospatial background, and they can draw a polygon that represents one EWN feature or many EWN features. And then there's going to be this semi-automatic process that incorporates that feature into existing hydrodynamic models. So currently, there is no standardized and streamlined way of doing this. So the inclusion of NNBF in the numerical modeling framework is cumbersome. It requires a high expert level, or it requires you to talk to an expert on what incorporation looks like. And because the approach hasn't been standardized, that means numerical modelers can be incorporating these features in very different ways across the nation. So we developed this workflow for incorporating NNBF into our existing sea storm modeling system. And we realized what needed to happen was you needed to be able to drop a shapefile in that represents your feature. The system needs to automatically resolve the mesh at your feature location. It needs to automatically increase or decrease your topography or bathymetry according to the design, and it needs to represent your feature by retarding the flow through a coefficient of friction. So the toolkit will semi-automatically do those three things. The reason I keep saying semi-automatically is because if there is expertise that wants to be implemented, we wanted to leave that window open. So the toolkit will automatically adjust the friction, automatically change your resolution, but allow the user to say, actually, I only have this many computer nodes running. I can't have a resolution that fine, or there's just some play allowed with it. And what's great about this toolkit is because currently incorporation of these features is so labor intensive, that kind of limits the scope of work when you're looking to include those features within your design. So you're not looking at multiple designs, you're looking at the one design that you were able to model. And this toolkit is going to allow for the dragging and dropping of multiple shapefiles, so you can look at what adding different designs, natural nature-based feature designs look like rapidly. So you can have multiple polygons in your system and tell the toolkit to just augment these two or augment all 5 of your designs at once. So this is just going to really expand the innovation that's going to be allowed in NNBF designs. And Urtic is going to be hosting a 5-day workshop on the sea storm modeling system at the beginning of February. And one of those days will be a day for the EWN Toolkit. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me and I'll let you know how to get involved in that. We are going to be looking at just having a longer workshop, just focusing on the EWN Toolkit at the end of the fiscal year, which is about the September timeframe. So one of the goals of all of our research projects is to be a triple win project. So this triple win EWN statement is, we have a social win, we have an environmental win, and we have an economic win. And a great example project for this is the Horseshoe Bend in Louisiana. This project, again, we had a district reach out to us and say, we have dredged material, we want to strategically place it instead of dump it. What should we do? And we looked into the modeling of the flow of the river, and we found that if this material was dropped right in front of Horseshoe Bend Island, not only would that material capture additional sediment coming around this bend, but also the island would naturally restore itself through the flow of the river. So we're having nature work for us. And this island is being restored throughout the years by our dredge material placement. And then this placement is capturing and keeping sediment in the system. So what's really exciting about that is there's less dredging needed over time. So that really reduces the cost of this district's overall cost. So this strategic placement was used to create this 70-acre island, and it was quite a bit of, it was about 1.8 million cubic yards, and it was placed over 3 years. And the impact has been really, really beautiful. We've gone out there to look at the ecological environment, and we've seen a lot of SAV growth. We've seen a lot of critters, and we've seen a lot of fishermen who look at us like, are you going to take my fishing hole? This is my favorite fishing hole. So we know we're providing some social benefit there. And this was recognized through quite a few awards, award for environmental excellence, adaptation, and building with engineering with nature. So this is our triple win outcome with the Horseshoe Bend Island. Okay, now I'm gonna move to another research project that we just started in Point Hope, Alaska, where Point Hope was seeing, through the effects of climate change, a huge loss of permafrost and ice sheets, which unfortunately was leading to the erosion of their ice boxes, which the communities depend on to store food in throughout the year. So we have been working with those communities to figure out how they can possibly design an NNBF feature to protect those ice boxes and protect the shoreline of Point Hope, Alaska. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of unknowns here. So we have numerical modelers on the scene, but there's a lot of model uncertainty on how to incorporate permafrost or ice sheets into our numerical models. And we're looking at the nearshore region, which already has a lot of unknowns. And to inform our models, we need to first collect data in that nearshore region, which is a really turbulent area. So luckily we were successful, and we got our data from the nearshore region. We did not come back with all of our gauges, but we did get that data, and we've been using that to develop a model that can show us what incorporation of NNBF in a risk reduction design will look like. And I want to point out, before all of this, we also made sure to talk to the communities of Point Hope, Alaska. There are quite a few Native American tribes up there who, for good reason, for past reasons, don't really trust outsiders to just jump in the water and put equipment out there. So we developed a few workshops before even moving folks on the ground to make sure that we were being considerate of each of these tribes, and we were walking through the community engagement in the right way. And actually, we ended up working with a few high schools and had them help us fly some drones to collect elevation data. So this was a really great project for diving into the research unknowns, but also a great example of how we can make sure that we consider who it is that we're protecting using these risk reduction designs, and a great example of how to talk to the communities and engage in your actual stakeholders long term. Who are you working for? It was nice to get that visibility of who we were doing these things for. Next up, I want to talk about strategic communications. So I just talked about I did not talk about all of our R&D, but I talked about some of our R&D. Now I'm going to talk about how we get that R&D out. So like I mentioned at the beginning, we have these two EWN atlases. They're great communication tools. We have marsh designs, mangrove designs, river restoration projects, ecosystem restoration projects. And this is, like I said, half of these projects are USACE, but these projects are from around the world. A lot of UK designs, a lot of Netherlands. It's a really great tool to communicate your goals with your stakeholders and your partners. So I'm going to put a link in the chat for this. You can go to engineeringwithnature.org and ask for an atlas, but I'll give you the link directly to the atlas webpage. The international guidelines on the use of natural and nature-based features for flood risk management has been a guidelines document that we have been in the works for a long time to get this one published. And this summer, excitingly, we did just that. This is a multi-author, many governments, academia, NGOs, engineering firms, industry went into collaboration on this NNBF guidelines document, and we wanted to make sure we were addressing the full project life cycle. So this is what the guidelines look like. This is our table of contents. We have coastal and fluvial NNBF. We have this really great flow chart of what implementing a design even looks like to you. If you want to consider an NNBF design, we have a flow chart in this guidelines book of what start to finish that looks like. So it's kind of just like this recipe book on how to implement NNBF. And of course, there are many things that you need to consider: regionality effects, what mangroves look like in your backyard, what salt marsh looks like for you. You know, it's very different in the Gulf Coast than it is in the back bays of the Northeast. So yeah, so this is more like a recipe book for how to cook up your own NNBF, and you need to make sure you're finding the right ingredients along the way. But we're working on documentation for what ingredients look like in our different regions as well. So yeah, I just want to point out 170 authors contributed to this, and many of them were international, and there was just a highly collaborative group of folks that went into organizing this. And if you want to learn more, but you don't like reading, we have an EWN podcast. So the podcast is on season 3, and it's produced really well. You can get it on Spotify or wherever you find your podcasts. But I mean, this is my job, and I enjoy listening to this after work. The music's great. They do a great job of asking the tough questions and then the softball questions. And I feel like this has just been a really great tool for getting the word out on our different projects and practitioners and partners. So I highly recommend taking a look at the podcast. And with that, I think I'll take any questions, and I'll go through with my promise to drop a bunch of links in the chat, because I know that you can't pull from my slides. But yeah, and again, thank you for having me. Please check out engineeringwithnature.org, and yeah, take it away, Chris.
All right. Thank you for that great presentation, Amanda. I did see a couple of typed in questions. We'll start there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you're welcome to do the raise hand feature. We'll look for those and then unmute you and call on you. You'd be able to ask the question directly. So starting within the chat, the first question was from William McAnally, who said, in prior years, we had difficulty getting RSM and beneficial uses implemented when they were not the least cost alternatives, even though WRDA allowed for some excess costs. Have you encountered such issues with EWN?
Yeah, and one of our collaborators is RSM, and we are working, there is new WRDA out to support how that language should look like to get BU in your design. But yes, we have, of course, have encountered that with EWN, and we've worked with those proving grounds and those practitioners that I mentioned earlier who have been able to work with that policy to create the openings to do BU within their project space. So yes, we've encountered this. I think the future is looking a lot brighter, both for RSM and EWN. And that came up a lot in our BU workshop. So there's still a lot to do. But if you work for USACE, contact either Monica Chaston or Elizabeth Godsey on how to get WRDA to work for you, because they have figured it out. And Kate, of course, Katie Brochet, she knows.
All right, thanks for that. Second question from Golam Muhidin. Is there any volunteer program for the technical professionals to get involved with different EWN programs? So is there like a, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Network for Engineering with Nature, we are having a meeting this Friday to figure out what that looks like, because currently there's different levels, or there's different types of involvement that universities and different organizations have within the network. We've created these 4 pillars of research strategy development, where within the network, we have these pillars. One of them is creating standards and methods for EWN implementation. Another one's education and outreach. Another is equity. So we have these pillars, and during these pillar meetings, there are volunteers on the call that are just asking us for, or contributing to the conversation of what it looks like to achieve those pillar research strategies. So right now, that's an easy in, and you can go to the Noon website, which is this one, and there's a tab to get involved. But I would look after this week, because we are going to meet on Friday and make that whole engagement a little bit smoother, so that we can have more volunteers that are outside of the universities we're currently working with get involved and help expand the practice. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that. Next question's from Doug Mann. Well, while many people of various backgrounds have advocated EWN, the amount of quantitative design guidance is limited, particularly in the value of vegetation and risk reduction. Does your research program address this gap in knowledge?
Yeah, we're very aware of this need to quantify what that vegetation is providing in risk reduction benefit. And like I just mentioned, the Standards and Methods group has brought that up quite a few times at the Network for Engineering with Nature talks. And Urtic is developing a strategic plan to, now that we've identified what the specifics of those gaps of knowledge are, we want to develop a strategic plan to help reduce that risk that right now you're taking on. If you include an NNBF in your design, we want to quantify what that reduction should be, so we can buy some of that risk back from the implementers. So yes, and this next year, we're about to come out with a few research projects that will focus on that specifically at Urtic.
All right, thanks for that. Cheryl Hepke asked, how does private industry link to the NEWN, or the noon as you call it?
Cheryl, I ask that you email me next week, because this is line item on our meeting for Friday, because we have a few industry folks reaching out, and we are working with them to get them incorporated in noon. But we want to make sure this process is transparent and available to other industries. So I will have a great answer for you next week, and I'll send it to you if you send me an email. I'll drop my email in the chat, but also I'll send something to Chris Bender in case anybody else wants to bother him about how to do that.
All right, thanks for including me in that. Perfect. The next one's from Susan Davidson. Are you interested in international partnerships?
Yes, of course. We are trying to keep international partners every step of the way. So the initiative, EWN Initiative, is 11 years old. The program that has a funding source now is a year and a half old, but the initiative has been reaching out across the pond for a long time. We've been working with the Netherlands, we've been working with Australia, England. We will not say no to international partners, and we highly encourage it.
All right. The next question comes from Bill. It appears that most, if not all, of the EWN projects are meant for estuaries, rivers, and back bay regions. Other than traditional beach nourishment, have any NNBF ideas been offered for the open coast? For example, the beaches of the eastern Atlantic seaboard?
Yeah, we identified not only this, but also kind of watershed, ground table, concrete sources. There's a lot of NNBF that we identified that we haven't been focused on, and this next year we will be. So that's exactly one of them. Living Shorelines is going to be a focus on one of our research and development projects. So no at the moment, but yes in the long term.
Got it. So kind of a stay tuned answer, I guess.
Yeah, thanks for showing that there's interest in that, so that we can keep writing that one down as a focus area.
All right. From Nick Stefani, have you been involved or do you know of any Great Lakes projects previously completed or currently in construction? Is there a central place for Great Lakes research? I do not think I saw the Detroit district listed.
We have a Great Lakes project at Urtic, but it is not specifically engineering with nature. However, there will likely be an NNBF considered. I think Detroit is not one of our proving grounds. However, the district is included in the cadre that I mentioned at the beginning. So the coastal and riverine practice leads are a resource for the Detroit district if they did want to get involved in EWN or implement some NNBF designs. There's a central place for Great Lakes. Yeah, I guess it's just whichever district is nearby. I think EA has a lot of involvement there, so they're a good resource to reach out to. Yeah. Hopefully that answered it.
All right. From Mitchell Buck, any thoughts on trying to implement some of these NNBF measures in states where it's not historically been done and regulatory agencies are skeptical?
Absolutely. This is, it's a great year to be implementing NNBF. We had new documentation that came out in 2020 that requires our districts to consider NNBF. I've come across quite a few skeptical districts, and quite frankly, it it was to the public's benefit that they were skeptical. They weren't skeptical just to be skeptical. They just needed more information. So that's part of why we created the proving grounds and the practice leads, so that when we're talking high level, it's really easy to overlook that skepticism and not really head on tackle it with just increasing the knowledge base. So we're hoping that these practitioners can do that for us. And we absolutely don't want to leave anyone behind. But like I said, this is a great year for it because our new documentation, our new policy says you have to consider it, and the infrastructure bill will hopefully provide some funding so that that consideration isn't on the cost of the district.
All right. Mitchell says, thank you. From Jonathan Allen, many of the engineering with nature efforts are directed at low energy environments. In the Pacific Northwest, we have evaluated dynamic revetments with considerable success. However, there is reluctance by agencies to adopt them more broadly. Are there other solutions being evaluated for high energy environments?
Yeah, that's exciting to hear. I would love to see the results of that work. That was part of why we reached out to the South Atlantic Division, because as you point out, everything is in a low energy, no steep slope environment. Waves we didn't need to consider things like infragravity waves. So we absolutely have been focusing on the Pacific Coast. We have been partnering with OSU, Oregon State University, and we are, as Urtic, as the Urtic entity, we've been working to look at what even regional scale storm studies look like in the Pacific Coast. So we've done many different regional coast studies in the East Coast. You might have heard the North Atlantic Coastal Comprehensive Study, the South Atlantic Coastal Study, Coastal Texas Study. We've done a lot of these regional scale studies, and we are very aware that we've not tackled the West Coast. So we have started a regional scale study over there. We're looking at incorporation of things like infragravity waves. And as Urtic turns its eye that direction, EWN has been working to do the same. And we want to make sure that we are offering solutions to the Honolulu district, for example, and not just the ones that we're comfortable with. We've been really focusing on moving to the Pacific Southwest, as you saw with the division, but of course the Pacific Northwest. And I'd love to see these results from the dynamic revetments, because this question comes up quite often, and I'm always like, yeah, I know high energy, it's difficult. So I'd love to see your successes. Maybe this is a partnership in the works.
Great. And Amanda's email is listed there in the in the chat for anybody that's interested, also shown on the screen there on the slide that's shown. We have one more question right now. It's from Tucker Adams. Are there opportunities for students to be involved in the work EWN is doing, internships, research, et cetera, now or possibly down the road?
Yes, please. That was one of our goals with the Network for Engineering with Nature, was to have a highly available educational resource to students. We also have, currently we have ORISE scholarships available. So the ORISE scholarship is, you get funded by Urtic while working at your university to do research with us. Typically, students will use that research as their master's or dissertation research. We currently have 2 scholarships like that are placed on our USA job site. I can also follow up with Matt Bilski or Chris Bender with the links directly to those scholarships. And we hope to continue to put those out through the network, because when we have those scholarships and we have students working with us, it seems to be when we have the coolest research come out. So absolutely, yes, we want to include students.
All right. We just had one more question come in from Fred Scott. Could you provide a brief description of the solution that was implemented at Point Hope, Alaska?
No solutions yet, Fred Scott. We are still just collecting data and trying to develop our models. so that we can figure out what that system even looks like. But I will be sure to come in and tell you guys on the next Lunch and Learn what we implement over there at Point Hope. But whatever it is, it's going to have a monitoring and adaptive management plan associated with it. We want to make sure that we're also considering O&M and what that looks like. Of course, O&M for an NNBF looks much different than traditional infrastructure, and of course, it's going to look much different up in Point Hope, Alaska. So we're definitely taking our time on that project, and yeah, I will share with whoever's interested the results when they come out.
Great. All right, one more followed up for Tucker's question. This is from Peyton Posey. I know a research team at the University of South Alabama is investigating the performance of several NNBF adaptation strategies on Dauphin Island, Alabama, using numerical models. Is there a way for them to collaborate with the work you guys have done as a way to expand their methodologies or compare results?
Yeah, absolutely. Please, bare minimum, send me an email. But yeah, there's absolutely an opportunity to do that. Dauphin Island is one of our proving ground islands that we point to. I'm sure the Mobile district will be interested in these results, but I'm trying to think of a specific researcher at Urtic who we could connect you with. Yeah, please just send me an email. We're actually going to be working with USA in the next year here. So this is a well-timed question, Peyton. I'd be very interested in working and sharing and collaborating, because we do have another researcher that was monitoring the waves action at Dauphin Island. So we can, of course, share those findings as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess Amanda should expect a fair amount of emails. She just told of several people that was her answers. You're going to have a backlog, and I think you offered at a part 2 presentation sometime next year to provide updates on some of these things.
I just kept talking. Oh no.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
please reach out to me. That sounds great.
Well, I don't see anybody's hands up, and I didn't see any more questions in the chat. So with that, we'll wrap up today's Lunch and Learn. Thank Dr. Tritinger for making the presentation. I appreciate everybody joining in. I saw we had about 90 attendees there during the presentation, which is great. And if you have any questions or anything, reach out to me or Sean at COPRI, or Amanda with her email as well. And have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.